The US for the carnage. Well, let's get into that further and cross live now to Sreeram Chaulia, an international affairs commentator. You're very welcome to the programme. The US has been supplying the Saudi-led coalition with weapons, and the rebel attack on the US ships seems to be a response to that. Are we seeing an escalation in the conflict?
This is a very unfortunate escalation. I think the Americans fancied themselves to be somewhat neutral, but the reality, they're showing the true colors now, which is they have all along been supporting Saudi Arabia's barbaric bombing campaign in Yemen. And now they've, in many ways come out openly and have attacked Houthi positions. So unfortunately for the Americans, the evidence is showing that the Saudi bombing has been devastating for civilians, but then the Americans are unable to disentangle themselves from the Saudi embrace and to take a more critical position of Saudi Arabia. This fateful alliance, unfortunately, US-Saudi Arabia, is at the root of this current action, which is to say that, even though Obama administration tried to reach out to Iran, end of the day, they are with Saudi Arabia, and that's what they're showing. They are on the wrong side of history, because the people on the ground, it's not just the Houthis, ordinary Yemenis are all united in a form of a national resistance against Saudi intervention. So Saudi Arabia, unfortunately, has dragged in the Americans, and the Americans have gone along with it. It is one more fateful decision by Obama administration. If Libya was a mistake, Yemen is proving to be as big a mistake for the US government.
Well, you mentioned Libya, the likes of Afghanistan, the campaigns there by the US. Are there echoes of that? Because the airstrike against the Houthis is the first direct military involvement by the US in its war in Yemen. That's 18 months long. This is the first time it's happened. We know that Washington says that it's ready to strike again. Are we looking at a military campaign in Yemen by Washington?
I don't think Obama will go that far as a full-fledged campaign, but I think they perceive that they have a hegemonic position in the Red Sea, controlling the Bab el-Mandab Straits, between the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea, and they fear that if Iran or their so-called proxies, even though there's no clear link between the Houthis and Iran, they say that if Iran tries to challenge their position in the Red Sea, then they have to respond and to re-establish their hegemony. So unfortunately, the great power games are going on. The United States is playing the game, but what is happening on the ground, the devastation of Saudi military campaign, hospitals and educational institutions are being pummeled. And that, the Americans are saying they're reviewing our decision to support Saudi Arabia, but nothing much has happened. More than 10,000 people have been killed. There's carnage going on, mostly civilians, but the Americans are continuing to back the Saudis against the Houthis. So I think they are still looking at it from a great power logic of containing Iran. Unfortunately, it's proving to be bloody and terrible for the civilians of Yemen.
Just before we came to you, we spoke about that funeral in Sana'a, which was attacked. Over 150 people were killed, civilians. Washington promised to review its cooperation with Riyadh in the light of that. Do you think it's going to keep its promise in taking into account these latest developments, this direct attack by Washington? Well, no. I mean, you see, at the end of the day, they are still, stuck in an old logic, which is to somehow contain the so-called Iranian influence or not to allow it to grow, because Iran remains an independent country. Well, Saudi Arabia has always, more or less towed the US line for a long time, even though they have started moving away now. So I think they want dependent, so-called trusted allies in the region who are like client states. And they will always try and oppose countries which are considered to be radical or which are anti-Western. And therefore, Houthis are being seen now as somehow a kind of a fifth column of the Iranians, and they must be stopped. So this is the Saudi. So in many ways, Americans have fallen into the Saudi trap. And it's very sad to see how Obama administration has been sleepwalking through this war. First, they said we are not directly involved. Now they're getting, in a way, directly involved. And anyway, the ammunition, as you said, the fighter jets, the military deals they're doing with Saudi Arabia to try and pacify and mollify them, they're trying to have the cake and eat it too. They want to slightly improve relations with Iran, but also keep the Saudi alliance. That is actually a big contradiction and a failure of the Obama administration. Well, helping us to make sense of what looks like an unclear situation with the developments in Yemen. That's Sreeram Chaulia, international affairs commentator. Thank you.